Okay, so hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast, early morning edition. My name is Rami. I'm here to bring the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course, author interviews. And with me today is my amigo, my compadre, my friend, my buddy, Dakota, crowd author of the Divine Dungeon series, who also is working on an entirely new series with new concepts, new peoples. So welcome to the show, Dakota.
Good morning, Ramon. It's really good to be here with our coffee. And thank you to everyone who is getting up so early to do this or to watch this. Or if you're watching this later, that's fine too, of course.
Yeah. We have like four whole viewers this early in the morning.
Ooh,
I think one of them might be your wife, one of them might be my wife who are watching over YouTube.
My wife is making breakfast.
Facebook, yeah. One Facebook Live viewer. Yay! We are streaming this on both Facebook Live and also on YouTube Live. Dave Willingworth in the chat room says, "Blar, morning, bright light."
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave, for getting up so early.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Morning.
Yeah,
specifically to you.
Yeah, for me, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I don't think I've gotten up this early in like years, because I used to work a night job, so I was coming in at this time and not waking up at this time.
Sure. For me, I'd be at work by now, so
good for you. Well, I don't know if that's good for you, but it's at least coherent.
Work is work. Yep. Yeah. Sure. Alrighty, Ramon. Well, how's things going? And Dave, anything you want to hear, man, you just go ahead and write in. So
yeah. So for me, it's doing really good. I have been loving the podcast. Some really interesting new game stuff. I really love hanging out with you during that game session for
that was really fun.
The author's game thing that we did, which was just kind of neat. Charles Dean is a super friendly dude, and he was like, "Let's do a game thing," and I'm like, "Okay." And in a couple of days, we just kind of threw that thing together. And thanks for showing up and being such a fun person to talk to.
Thanks for having me. It was pretty fun. And I am looking forward to trying to put together a author's D&D. For a couple of reasons, if we can do it, obviously I'm not going to hold anyone to it, but I think it'd be super fun because how we get, as authors, we get into character when we're in character. And even if we're not voice actors or anything, I think that it would be really fun to see how everyone reacts with a personality like that. So
yep, no, absolutely. I agree. Let's see. Craig Dunn in the Facebook live chat says, midnight over here in Australia. Oh, so he stayed up late to come hang out and watch. So thanks, Craig. Wait, there's my face. Thanks, Craig. Switch over on the hangout. But yeah, the author thing was really fun, and I'm looking forward to doing a D. It's just I know you're busy. You have several, things going on right now, including a new Bambina coming on the way. So I'm like, that's.
We're gonna have actually our first baby was due last Wednesday, so anytime at this point, by Thursday this week at the latest. So
yeah, so congratulations on that, man. Being a dad is the biggest and best job I hear.
I hear, but I don't know. And authors must be a close second then, because we get to meet people like Ramon. Hey, all right.
But yeah, no, fatherhood has always kind of been scary to me personally. It's I'm always worried about am I going to be a good dad? Am I going to mess this kid up?
This is a serious concern. But I don't know. I think it'll be worth it. And my wife, my wife is there to fix any mistakes that I make. So
that's the family planning schedule. I may screw things up, but my wife is way smart. She'll fix it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Yeah, I hear you, buddy.
Crowd over there.
Let's see. Dave Willimore at the chat room says, he joined the D&D thing as long as he doesn't have to be the bard. And also, why is the baby late? Is it still editing?
Why is the baby late? Is it still editing? Terrible. Oh, that's great. I don't know, but my adorable little deadline there, she was, instrumental in me getting my third book out on time. So
Yeah, no, I saw like in the what is it called? The acknowledgments and the dedications.
Yep.
You mentioned her, and you also named a character after her, didn't you, in your story?
I did. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like,
gonna be a really minor character in the future books, but just it was more just like for fun sort of thing.
Yeah, I told my heart totally melted when I saw that name in the actual site. Like,
yeah,
totally, buddy. So yeah, what kind of D&D campaign were you like planning out? How had you thought about it yet?
Yeah, actually, I have a whole thing written up. So I'm ready for whenever people are ready to play, and I have time. So it'll be interesting because I would like as many. I want to say as many people as possible, but probably not with the multiple thousands of people that would like to join us. I'm sure it'd be very hard to manage that campaign. But I'm sure people that would be good for this, and I know that we talked about this with the author group, so I think I would want to extend invitations to them first. But then people like Jay Taylor and a few other people have also been like, hey, hi, yes, I'll join.
Well, it's good. Like, what's the max number of people you think you would be good for this kind of thing? Honestly, I've never played a D&D campaign, and I've never ran one, so I don't know the mix. As far as like the recording stuff, which would be on me. I'm like, oh, just people in a window, and it's me clicking on their faces so they can make comments.
I usually, if you have a 5-man group, that's usually best. I could go, like 6 or 7, but I have done a 9 to 12 before, and it was not very fast paced. Pretty much because it's like.
Does that include the DM, or is that like 5?
No. That's five players. So okay. DM excluded. Because if I'm playing the DM, my job is to kill all of you. So your job is not to make stupid mistakes that get you killed.
Well, it's good to know, who the adversary is going into the game. I'm generally looking forward to like playing it so much, just because like my entire life has been like, oh, I've always wanted to play. I've read the manuals for like 3.5 rule set of D&D and was super into it as a teenager. It's just that I never found people to play with in my particular area.
It is surprisingly difficult to find people to play with, mainly just due to scheduling conflicts. But if you can set up a time, like if we can be like, hey man, every Thursday night from this time to this time, we're gonna do this. But that's gonna be even more interesting with all these different time zones. So
yeah, that's kind of like all these authors have their work schedules, and some may drop in and drop out. And from what I've been told from other people, like Jay Taylor, who's like, no, you can set it up so that it's okay for people to drop in and out. And like as long as you have a pre-made character sheet for them, then it totally works just fine.
Sure. I usually stuff them in a bag and make someone carry them.
Yeah, see, there you go. They put them in the bag of holding. Yeah.
There you go.
A couple hellos from the chat room. Don Chapman says hello. Hi, Don.
Hey, Don. Thanks for showing up. Dave says you're about to be a sleep zombie and won't know the difference between a D5 and a D20 or a D6.
Oh, look at you reading the comments.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I don't have the Facebook one up, so I'm just watching the YouTube one right now.
Yeah, so. I think the Facebook one might have frozen. I don't know. Like I said, doing both at the same time is kind of a new thing to me. Like currently, like I think in the Facebook one, you're frozen like this.
Hey, all right, that's that's my driver's license photo too. Is I'm just like.
Yes, I don't know how well that's working. I'll click on it, but yeah, it's like 9 minutes of like you doing this so far. I'm like, oh, okay, well,
very nice.
Maybe I'll just finish that up because it didn't work.
Sheesh.
Yeah, so that's done. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Which means I can turn off the streaming part.
I have the YouTube video paused right now where you're like.
Well, I actually enjoy getting those screenshots and making those part of the video cover. It's highly entertaining.
Oh, nice.
I find like the weirdest face pose I can for myself. But I'm like, something like that. So I'll pull that up a little better. Okay, so I'm looking forward to the D&D campaign. Working that out. Maybe do another author's game thing at some point as well. It's just like for me, it's like, oh, I already have like 8 podcasts a month at minimum. 4 for the LitRPG podcast, 4 for the Geek Bites podcast, and then like some of the guys wanted to do a weekly game. Another game author game thing. Like that's another 4 podcasts for me to set up and record and to make time for research. Because all those questions have to change every week. I'm like, maybe we can do it twice a week or twice a month or something.
Yeah. I mean, definitely we could go every other week.
It's a thing.
Because I mean, everyone needs time.
I'm not doing research for the D&D one, so it's like we can do it as much as you want because
right.
No setup for me. But let's see. What else? Oh, yeah, but you're working.
Excuse me for a second. I'm gonna cough real quick.
See, folks?
Teeny tiny bit of a cold. Sorry about that.
He turned his head exactly when I made the motion.
There we go. So. All right. So what were you saying now?
Oh, I was saying you also are working on a new book, right? Like this is an entirely new series that I think you mentioned before during the author's game thing we did. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how far are you? What's the storyline?
Sure. I'm almost halfway done with that book because while editing was going on, I was writing this book. So it's not me just pounding out a book as fast as I can. It's I've actually had a few months to work on this already. So I know that's a concern sometimes. People are like, hey, you're putting out a book like 2 months after this one came out. Like, are you out of your mind? I'm like, well, no, I'm not Michael, I'm not Mike Chatfield but with the insane writing speed and amazing books, but hopefully people like the books. So this one is the series name is going to be the Completionist Chronicles. I already have a contract for 3 books for the audiobooks.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, you're going through the publisher. I thought that's what you meant, but 3 audiobooks for it. Nice.
Yes. So that was really nice. So there will be at least 3, and it's going very well. It is a little bit more classic LitRPG. So it is a actual person who's the focus of the story, and he does walk around. So that's quite a change for me. So it's interesting. My person is walking on legs, and I'm not really sure how to deal with that. So it's really fun though. I am trying to create a entirely unique. Well, I mean, is anything really entirely unique? I'm sure someone out there has something similar, but I am trying to make a unique system for them to be using. And I really do want to talk about it, but I also really want it to be like kind of a shock to the system when people are reading it. And I know that there are a lot of very fast writers out there, so I'm concerned to be like, this is exactly what it is. But I will say that he, throughout his game, is pretending to be a cleric. So a big part of what he's doing is healing people throughout. So he's not a dedicated healer, but he pretends that he is. So that's pretty fun.
That's cool. I mean, you don't have to spoil plot points. I'm curious, like, is this going to be trapped in the VR game, transported to a game world?
Yes and no. So
those are the 2 answers. Yeah.
So it is going to be. Well, no, it is going to be considered they're going to be thinking they're in a VR, but essentially they're going to be not quite like the Amarelia series where you're actually in a new world, but it is going to be something other than a video game.
Okay, so
it's not its own.
Like if you're doing the author blurb, like the book description, it would be like, oh, the character he's traveling this VR game, but not everything is as it seems.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm hoping not to, hit the exact same words that other people use when I'm doing that, but it's very fun right now. I'm putting in a new system for so I'm using a D&D-esque leveling system. So that means for every level you get, you need the cumulative experience of the previous level. So level 1, to get to level 2 is 1,000. And then level 3 would be 3,000 points because it's double the last, right? So, getting to level 10 is quite a challenge.
Yeah, no, that's what I use for the Adventures in Terror series as well, which is why people could play. Like, he's book 3 coming up, and he's only level 5. What's up with that, man? I'm sorry, but that's how the numbers come out for the system.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, there's like legitimate numbers you should be using. Like, if it's a challenging thing, you're supposed to get more experience. But a lot of it is, and a lot of people don't realize, but in games like that, the best way to level up is to complete quests, because quests have a set amount of experience. And if you have a flat amount to get to the next level every time, it doesn't matter if like you're turning in your quests at, if you save all your quests to level 7, turn them all in at once and, gain 3 levels. That's a total possibility, but something I might think of using.
That's definitely what I realized writing. I'm sitting on a novel right now, Project Alpha, which is an entirely different series. But at the same point, I'm also working on Adventures in Terror book 3. I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't think about this from like the Dungeon Master's point of view, creating quests with enough experience points, which was why my character gained like a whole level in book 2 for the entire thing. So at this point, I'm like, I should have made more quests, because just grinding these monsters out is not really cutting it. So I'm like, oh yeah.
Yep. But it is important to go out and fight those monsters, because you can be level 10 and have no combat experience, and then you walk into a fight and a level 2 kills you,
Yeah. No, yeah. It's absolutely important, but that's kind of all I've been relying upon for like the first couple books. Like, there have been some quests in there, but I'm realizing as the story goes, I'm like, all the things he does, like I can throw a quest in there and kind of just decide how much experience points to get them. Like, I could, as an author, like thinking in advance, like, oh, where do I want my character's level to be by the end of the story for whatever reason, instead of just like letting the numbers decide. Like, oh, kind of plan it out at least a little bit, and then put little quests in there or whatever, and that can be part of the story. I'm doing more of that in Project Alpha, which is the other book that's like set up and ready to go. I'm like, I kind of realized that going in, and that's a much bigger level gain throughout that entire life. By the end of that story, he's level 10 in one book, instead of like by book 3 in Adventure in Terror, like he's level 5. I'm like, okay.
Sure, yeah, and I totally get that. I will speak on that a little more, but I have a couple of comments here. So we have Don Chapman. What's the description? What's description? I'm not really sure.
I think she was talking about, like, when I said it, I'm like, that what description? Yeah, because
gotcha.
When you're talking about your book. And Dave Wilmar says, and quest, get you cookies. Unless the quest comes from Daniel Schienehofen, he won't give up his cookies. Not according to that last book he wrote that came out today. I'm like, I just finished reading that last night. I stayed up way too late reading it. It's, what is it called? Rapture, Apocalypse, something.
Yeah.
I was just looking at it. It's out now. But it's a zombie apocalypse novel, but it also takes, like, the beginning part is it's kind of quest and mission based. It reminds me a little of like Scotty Fuchs's zombie apocalypse story, where like there's a base in a game system and he can kind of go out and do quests, right? And then later on in the story, it goes like more traditional zombie apocalypse. But his author cut is totally sexy. Like there's a lot more sexy, and they're super adultish, which is why it's the author cut. So when Dave says he's not giving up cookies, I beg to differ. He gives it a lot in that particular edition. The PG-16 version just cuts out the sex. It has everything else though. So
sure. Okay. See, when he said gives up the cookies, I was like, oh man, I can give my guys cookies. But then I didn't even realize what he was really saying, because I'm used to reading like we're gonna have lemons, right? Because that's how I see it in other areas like Royal Road. If you have lemons, that means sex scenes in your books.
Oh,
yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Cookies are like sweet and delicious, and you want them as much as possible. But I'm like, lemons. How does that work?
I have no idea. I actually have never seen cookies used as the descriptor for sex scenes. So that's
really like giving up the cookie.
No,
the cookie and the nookie. No. Oh, okay.
No.
See, look, we're a couple, states separated, and these phrases just don't translate as well, I guess.
I guess you guys have lemons on a regular basis with your trees in your backyard and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of a lemon party, which I don't recommend you look up, but that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. I want to recommend that to people just so that they're as scarred as I am. But
oh, well, there you go. Aren't you generous?
Make sure you're at least 18 if you're looking that up.
Yeah, and David chat room says, no, literal cookies, tasty round sugary treats, dirty minds.
Thank you.
Oh, so Dave wasn't going that direction at all.
Yeah, Dave, you and I'd get along. I don't know what Ramon's doing here, man. It's crazy.
He said it, not me. I'm like, I knew he meant physical cookies for the quest part. I'm like, but Daniel doesn't seem, he doesn't seem selfish. So,
Sure. Right. So I'm sorry. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the system that I am using, though. Cool. If that's okay for the next one. So I'm going to do just kind of like an elevator pitch here. So typically the story is that you choose a class and you rank up. I mean, like you gain levels and you become stronger and all this fun stuff. What I'm doing is I'm implementing a system where when you get to level 10, you're able to take your class, and if you can find a place to rank up, you can. So say like rogue becomes assassin becomes like a defiler becomes a temple assassin or something like that. So what I'm trying to do is kind of like I think it was Fire Emblem did something similar. Like you would be like this, and then you'd find what you need to complete, kind of like a little minor quest to, get your rank up for your class, and then your class is back to level 0, or level 1, and you're
right, but it's more specialized now.
Going back up. Right, exactly. So specialization. So that's what I'm trying to do. It's really fun. It's really fun to write. Like I'm going through like, oh, I would play the heck out of this game. Oh my gosh. And it's really fun. Like I'm also trying to make it so that you, just like in reality, you don't need to fight to progress. So say you're a charismatic class, if you're like, hey there, you give me some experience, that should work for you as a bard, right? If you're out in like a tavern and you're playing songs, you're gaining like literal experience for your class, right? Yeah. Not right. So everything can give you experience if you're doing it like that. And with skills and whatnot, I'm kind of going the Emerelia way, where doing your stuff actually makes you progress in your skills instead of only adding skill points into it to get better. Like right. If you actually understand what you're doing, you're going to be better at doing it.
Right. No, that's kind of how you work the your magic system in the Divine Identity. Like you actually have to understand it. You have to do it to increase those skills. So it's not like it's a new ballpark for you, but it is definitely not the traditional D&D skill skill tree. Yeah. So
you level up and get match points. Right. But I mean, I am going to be incorporating skill points because there are going to be some things that are just like stupid hard to understand and do without just putting skill points in, and man, it's really fun to write. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I really hope that when it comes out, people are like, oh my gosh, this is great.
I hear you. I'm kind of the same way with Project Alpha. It was when I was like writing it was like I wanted to do something new and different than Adventures in Terror, and so I try to do a new game system, and ended up being very similar just because I'm not that creative, but I definitely changed how skill sets work. I basically messed with the experience points requirements for leveling, as far as like the game mechanics work. I implemented. Because it's set in a modern world. It's not set in like a fantasy world or like a super future one. It's like set into like 20, 30 years in the future. And the main character is a college kid, and he kind of stumbles into a dungeon, and that activates his ability to like access the dungeons that are like on a sub layer of our universe that not everybody can see. So I'm pulling stuff from like Persona 5 and like Scotty Future's worlds. Like ideas for this engine system, and like it got really fun. But like the skill system was interesting because like I did the same thing you were talking about in that characters can learn skills from doing things, and he does. Like he gets a skill in like inventory management because he works at a convenience store.
Sure,
and so
we've all
he's doing inventory. He gets that skill. But at the same time, later on in the story, he gets access to like a larger system information, and he can put skill points into things like nuclear physics if he wants to, or like mental math, and that'll help him in his schoolwork and stuff. So it was a very interesting story to create with because I wanted this world to be like I wanted the game stuff to help him in real life instead of just like always just being for the dungeon fighting or for the quest doing. Like to see those, like what would it be like if you had game powers in the real world. And so it was a really interesting creative process, like to think of like how we would use them and would we abuse them, or especially like when it comes to like romance, like that identify skill becomes an interesting two-edged sword when you're trying to get to know someone on a date. You know what I mean? And
That's
a few comments
terrible.
on the
like I love it. It's terrible.
No, it is. It's a very, like I said, I liked writing it. It was very fun just to think of like, oh yeah, some jerks would totally abuse this system, and other people would be like, maybe I just don't want to use that skill because I want to get to know them the long way.
Crazy eyes +2.
Oh no, that totally comes up, man. Like for reals, there's a whole little section in there about, you meet that crazy girl and he's glad he has identify, or inspect at that point. Yeah, it's a fun little like a little mini story. Comments from the chat room. Let's see.
Oh, great.
Don's laughing at Dave. Dave says Defiler sounds like Ramon's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It does seem like a fun class. And Don says you're both create people. Great work. Well, Dakota is totally creating a people right now, like any minute, hopefully.
My job was done a while ago. 10-ish months.
Yeah, his wife is like doing all the hard work now. He just gets to sit back and smoke cigars and drink coffee.
Yeah, that's what happens.
So fun
creative.
stuff.
Yeah, creative. All right.
I think like half the fun sometimes of writing LitRPG is like, for the writers at least, like just creating cool game systems, like things we don't see in actual video games, or things that we've seen in video games, like, this would be a great way to twist it or to like modify it and like see what kind of stories we can kind of pull out of the system. And just kind of doing the word come from as video game players and RPG players. I think some people come from that direction. Other people are like, I want to write a cool story, and the game stuff is secondary sometimes, but it doesn't mean it's any less enjoyable to create. But for like, I think like me and you, it's like half the fun is like, what kind of rules can I set and how can I break them later with the character? You know
right. I mean? And another thing is like, I'm not a huge fan of like tables in my books. So I really like to keep that fairly minimal, but like I keep very good track of everything. Like I have an Excel sheet, man, that has all my quests, all my titles. I have like every stat, like all the hidden stats that you just don't see as, in the book, like every little thing. And one of my favorite things to do is to legitimately roll a die. Like, is he going to make it through the situation? Well, I can kill him. So, it looks like it's not his day. And another thing for like creating monsters or creating terrain, like I'm not always 100% sure where I'm going to go. So I have a list of terrain. I have a list of monsters, and then I roll a die, and I'm like, all right, he's going into wetlands. All right, and in the wetlands there are, zombie leeches, or whatever.
You're really rolling your story like a DM. Like,
yes.
Some like random monster encounters, random terrain.
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's a way to get over those creative hurdles. We're like, I don't know where he's going. We'll let the dice decide.
Exactly.
Vegas style.
And like you said, it really does kind of just run in when there's a creative hurdle, because, but I do have a plot for the book, so I know kind of where it's going. Don't think that it's only a campaign, people, but in the best of ways, it's very fun.
I think you mentioned like you can kill people in this new story, so there's a respawn system in it.
Yes, there is. So it is going to be kind of, like I said, more classic LitRPG, where you have like respawns. You have it is in a game world, especially to start with. And I will definitely give more details as we get closer to the release date. Like when I'm like a month out, I'm gonna be like, okay, cool, I can tell you about things, because I don't know anyone except Chatfield that can write a book in a month and be any kind of decent, you know.
I don't know, Chatfield writes it in 2 weeks, and then the other half of that month is spent with editors, and he's writing a second book that month.
Yeah, he's very impressive. I'm gonna have more coffee. There we go. Yeah.
But I was gonna say, like, with the respawn thing, because this is where I was going with, like, because I implemented respawning in Project Alpha. I'm like, it's kind of freeing a little bit, because you can now murder your character multiple times in different ways, and that's
like, man, I'm getting really sick of your attitude.
Yeah, it can be kind of the fun of, like, that learning experience is different for the main character. Like, when you have the ability to kill your character off and not worry about, like, super, like, him just going away forever. Same way it was in like in the Divine Ninja series, like, characters die, they don't come back usually, right? So that's like,
there's the one.
yeah, there's the one, but it's like it's hard for you to, like, make tension based upon death necessarily. You know what I mean? Or, like, if someone dies, it's like a really big event. But in those games or the stories where it's VR game based, where your characters can die and come back, and it's, you know, it's a learning experience, that gives you a very different storytelling opportunity, because you can show, like, really stupid mistakes for your characters, and you know, they can learn from, like, you know, running off cliffs because they weren't looking where they're going, or going to a mob fight. But, you know, it makes sense, like, oh, if they fight characters that are 10 levels more than them, okay, they're probably going to die. As opposed to other stories where it's just the one life, like, you know, them going into it, they're probably going to figure out some weird way to survive. But so I think it's very interesting. It's kind of a freeing
it is
freeing mechanic.
It is. And well, another great thing about it, well, building tension, like you said, it is difficult when you're like, oh, well, they will come back. Like, it is a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, you can build the tension and then kill them. So it's like, oh no, you know, all this stuff is going on, and then you don't have to George R. R. Martin it, where that character's gone forever, like you were saying. Right. But in this one, it's definitely dying is a huge detriment, because so if a player kills you, like if you get player killed, I'm making it so that there's no penalty for the person who got killed.
Okay.
Right. So you have a respawn timer. So, you know, 1 hour in the game is half hour in the real world. You know, so you're out for like a few hours of real world time, but beyond that, you don't lose experience, you don't lose items, all this other stuff. It's basically just someone's being a dick. You know, someone is just being a total jerk, and they don't want you to play this game that is very, very expensive to have a, you know, access to. So they kill you, and you're out of the game for a while, and you lose basically a few $100 because it's a very high subscription.
Okay, so it's a pay per hour model.
Well, it's just like you purchase monthly subscription, and it's like $50,000 a month.
Oh, okay.
With the benefit of that being that you can make that in real world money. You can pay off your subscription, sort of thing, by playing the game. So another thing is when you die and it's your fault, you're out for longer. If it's like, wow, you were totally stupid, your respawn timer has jumped from 6 hours to 12 hours. You know, I don't know why you jumped into
the lava pit.
Yeah. I don't know why you decided to test your diving skills in the lava pit, but that was probably a dumb idea. But then when they die, in a PvE player versus environment, it's going to be whatever level you are, you lose that times 100 experience. So as you know, grinding against monsters is not like, that's like a full day or more of grinding. Like, I'm talking 12 hours of constant fighting. You're like, wow, I was level 8, I lost 800 experience. That was like 80 wolves I just lost, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, building experience or building drama that way kind of is how I'm going about it. Like, they feel pain, like it's full on pain. they have serious consequences for dying, so they are very, very adamant that they don't want to die. So, yeah, we'll get there in a very, very fun way. I'm just so excited to release this one, man. I've been working on this since since writing the Dungeon Madness. I started a few side projects. I actually have just a ton of books lined up that I just need to find the time to write. And so I want to do this year, what I really want to do is I want to get out the first book in this series, and hopefully the second right away. I also want to start a prequel to Divine Dungeon, which is going to be the story of the Master, which is the big bad guy in my book. And I,
well, you see him mostly, I think, in book 3. You start to see him in book 3, I think.
Yeah,
the Master, right?
Right. And there are very, like, I have that one done about 30%, maybe 40%.
Oh, was that was the Master a Doctor Who reference by chance?
No, it wasn't. No. Sorry. But it's actually it's going to be no, I don't want to say that one. But it's before I put out the 4th in the Divine Dungeon series, I want to have out the Master's story.
Okay.
I'm debating on if I want it to be a standalone or a series. It's looking more and more like standalone, but it will help explain a lot of stuff that I have planned for book 4.
That's good. I like that idea, like creating a standalone story just for your villain. James Hunter did that with the Artificer, and I like the way it kind of added another layer of just background information when I went back to the VGO series in book, I think it's 3 or 4, because then that character meant more to me, because now I have all this information, but his backstory, his history, he feels more fleshed out, and it didn't take up space in the main VGO storyline, the main series. Let's see, a couple comments from the chat room. Don is like, oh, she meant creative, not create. She still has alcohol in her system probably, so yeah. And Dave Wilmar says, go ahead, spill all the beans, man. Nobody else will see this. So he's encouraging you to give away plot points, as am I.
There you go. Well,
it's good. Yeah, it looks like you have quite a few books planned out. I don't. I have Project Alpha, which is just waiting for cover art. And then I have the 3rd book in the Adventures in Terror series kind of planned out, my head being written. But beyond that, I'm like,
Sure. Well, I mean, I believe in you. You'll something will come to you, and you'll write another amazing story.
Oh, Dave has a very interesting theory about where you got the Master from. He thinks you got it from 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, ew, no.
No? Okay.
I have actually not read that book, and I have no intention to. For 2 reasons. 2 reasons. Yeah. One, I'm told that the actual writing in it is just terrible. And 2, it's just not my kind of story.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I get that. I agree. I read part of the beginning because, like, okay, I'll try this out. People seem to like this for some reason. What's the thing? And I read it. I'm like, oh no, this writing is this is not good writing. Like I've read enough romance novels and like LitRPG with like romance sex stuff, and that I'm like, I can compare and say like, oh, this 50 Shades of Grey is not a great example of good writing or like good like sex scenes. I'm like, this is, I'm like, I guess it just appeals. It got mass market appeal, but like there are better examples of like romance writing. Even among like our people, like Eden.
I mean, a big thing is you got to do it tastefully. Like if you're gonna have that sort of stuff in there, it's got to be. It can't just be like he was walking along and was suddenly jumped by a harem. No, it's like, come on, man. Like
that honestly sounds fun.
That's not.
That sounds really fun. That particular idea of,
I don't know, man. I think that's a good way to disappoint like 3 people at once. So, I'm waiting for the invasive questions from the peanut gallery, because this is an AMA, y'all. So if you have anything you want to ask, feel free to ask, and I'll answer if I can.
We have a couple people. I think it's just too early for most people. I think Danielle tried to jump on the Facebook live chat, and then she quickly dropped because it wasn't working. So I thought that was entertaining. because I think she wants to listen in on my side of the conversation in addition to like yours. Because she, from her point of view, she's hearing you laugh and giggle, but she can't tell what you're talking about. Like that's unfair.
Nice. Well, you're funny, so what can I say?
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah.
You giving me the vapors.
So, Ramon, at this point, we take your book with a crayon cover. Hit the button.
Yeah, that's from Dave Wilmarth in the chat room. He mentioned that. I'm like, I would love to throw it out there. It's just that I'm paying for this cover art, so I need to use it at some point. Plus, it's like I'm doing the audiobook now, like I already have in production, so like waiting is not a huge deal. It's just like, oh, it'll be closer to like the release of the audiobook version. I think my audiobook narrator is at chapter 14 of like 49, so she's roughly, what is that, 30% through the novel at this point. So I'm like, okay, we'll see how that turns out. It's the same narrator, Jill Smith, as the Adventures in Terror series, so it's interesting to see what new voices she comes up with for characters, because this one is also very much, again, it's in the modern world, but it's also though based on a Hispanic male character, and so there's definitely some like Hispanic references and like family stuff, and like the story isn't just about dungeon diving, it's also about his home life and things like that. So like it was very interesting to bring in modern references and like family drama sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is really it's a new creative experience because in this book as well, I've been reading like writing manuals, or not, I want to say like writing tombs, or like reading writing scrolls to get new skill sets, but like books on writing, like how to create plots and how to do pacing and how to set up tension and stuff, like all those writing stuff that you think people would read before they read a book. I didn't, because this was a new thing for me. And I kind of implemented a lot into this particular story, just as an experiment almost, to see how it would work for people. So I'm kind of curious to see if people think that the writing is better or if it's worse, which can be the case.
Hey man, you know what? I think it's great. You know, as long as you're writing what you want to read, that's kind of my thing. Like that's my only advice really that I can give to other people. You know, you write a book, and if you read through it and you're like, man, I would love to read this as someone who is not me, you know, that's what I try to do in my books. Like I'm trying to be like, hey man, here's what I want to see out of a book, and if I write that and I'm like, man, I enjoyed that story, then I really hope that other people will as well, you know. And I really think that with your books, you know, they have good appeal, and I think that this next one that you're talking about, the Project Alpha, sounds really fun. And Dave says, are you going to have a Hispanic mom boss with a wooden spoon of arse weapon?
Yeah, no, it's actually in the Hispanic culture. It's the chancla dun. It says Hesho in Mexico. You know, you put it as a ranged weapon. So.
Is that a flip flop?
Dakota, Dave Will in the chat room says, Dakota, you mentioned an audio contract. Who's going to narrate?
Oh, I have the contract stipulates that it will be Vikas Adams. So the guy that has been doing my audiobooks to this point, who, by the way, is, I think, nominated for the Hall of Fame right now, the Audiobook Hall of Fame. And one of the 3 books that got him the nomination was Dungeonborn, so that was really cool. And I'm hoping he wins. You know, I'm not really sure how that is progressing. He just got inducted, so just directly right in. Nice.
Well, see, there you go. So I was crossing my hands, my fingers, and my eyes for no reason. He already won it.
Yeah. Oh, and another little plug here for Dylan. So Dylan is my main editor beyond my wife. And so Dylan Schnabel is trying to start a editing company, which will specialize in LitRPG. And seriously, yeah. And he has already gotten a couple of customers. I think I'm his biggest customer so far. And he's very good. He's very fast and discreet. So I think he's starting an actual company. And he has a website on Twitter and on, I think he's building a webpage because he's also a programmer. We went to school together. So I think he's making his own website. But I'm just putting that out there for LitRPG authors that are looking for a good editor. He's a very good editor.
Good for him. Does he have a website or something to go to, or like just contact him by email?
I will send you a link and maybe you can just kind of like throw it on because as far as I know, I've only seen it on Twitter so far. Sorry to say.
No problem. What's his Twitter handle?
Friend, unfortunately. Sorry, was that?
Okay. Let's see. Chat room says Don loves Vikas. Don also says when the muse strikes, you have to follow it. You can't force it. I love that about pantsing rather than plotting. Yeah, I agree that pantsing has that benefit of like part of the journey is part of the fun is the journey. Like you don't know where you're going sometimes. The other side of that coin is that you really don't know where you're going sometimes, and so the story can kind of meander a little bit if you don't have at least like an end goal. So there are trade-offs to that.
Yes.
Yep. Let's see. Don also says, "Sounds good. We need better editors in the genre. Pass me the info." Yeah. And editors that specialize in LitRPG, very good. I'm always like curious about like, okay, how editing are they? But like when you get recommendations from actual LitRPG authors, like, oh yeah, this editor totally gets it. They understand the concepts and everything. Those are always good to have and to find and pass around.
I'm putting his website into the chat here. There you go.
Let's see.
Well, I'm just doing it for the one for you, but I'll send it also to Don. Well, no, I won't because I can't put anything into YouTube. Sorry, Don.
No, that's not. If you want to drop it in the Google Hangout thing, yeah, there it is. I will pull it up and I will show people because we can share like our windows and stuff. So
much as I want to keep him all to myself, of course. You know, I think it's for the best if he, is able to do this more. Yeah.
Schnab blood editing.
Schnabel editing.
Schnabelediting.com. If you're watching the live video feed, you can see his beginning portion of the thing.
Right. Nice. Making LitRPG more fun.
Yeah, he's specializing, so good for him. Like as long as he's doing a good time. I don't think I could edit for a living personally. It is way too mind breaking for me. Like especially my own work, it's like super hard for me to see flaws.
Absolutely, and that's the thing in programming as well, man. If you are writing, that means like whatever you're putting down is the best of your ability at that time. And if you go back and you try to edit your own work right away, it's very hard to do because you're looking and you're like, this is perfect. You either need another person, an outside look, or you need to go back to it weeks later.
Yeah. Or you like otherwise you get stuck on making something perfect instead of being creative and finishing your novel.
Exactly.
Which is what we get folks like George R. R. Martin, who's spent years and years and years on a book trying to get it written and perfect it, apparently.
I would be surprised if he actually ever finishes the series just because he's like, I'm already a millionaire. So
what's the
kind of, like Name of the Wind guy.
What's the phrase? Perfection is the enemy of productivity. And I think that applies to writing as well. Like when you have to try to make something perfect, it's hard to move forward because you're stuck in making perfect mode instead of like, oh, this is good enough and putting it out there and moving on to something else. I think that's where a lot of like I want to say real writers, like people who are like writing degrees and who are passionate about the writing themselves, like they want their baby to be a work of art. And me, I'm like, I just want to tell a story and have people read it. And like I don't have an issue with like there being like story editing issues or like I'm okay with that.
Right. I agree. I try to make mine fun. I try to make it somewhat intellectual, like to read, like so it's not like he go hit with rock, but at the same time I'm certainly not a master of prose. I'm not a master of writing technique, but I feel that I do tell a good story, and being able to put that down is definitely very nice. So there's that.
Honestly, I'm not that great at writing prose. Like Dawn in the chat room, she's really good like actual writing style and phrase stuff. I think she also does screenwriting, and so she kind of shows in her work like she comes from that background. Like for me, I'm like I come from science and math, and technology, and like programming logic. And so the game systems are like really easy for I think people like us, and the writing stuff is the challenging part. Because like, oh, like I can't write code. Like if you could write through a novel in code, I think you'd be spitting out like 4 or 5 novels a week, right?
Yeah,
but the fact that we have to write it in like this weird English language, which is like a combination of like so many weird rules, that makes it so much harder. That's like the challenging part, I think, for people who are coming from like the game RPG side. But for writers coming into like it from like actual just writing skills, like the game stuff is super hard for them.
Yeah, like why would anyone want to see math in a book?
Yeah, like for real. Like, and I had people tell me that, like, authors say like, "Oh, I didn't really feel like putting in math because I'm not good at math, so there are no numbers in my game or my in my LitRPG book." And I'm like even if they're in the background, like we didn't see them, like you should probably have math somewhere in there to make sure that it's coherent and that like the rules make sense.
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's choice. It is what it is. But I get that there are two different kind of people coming into like the genre. I'm like, oh, okay. Let's see.
I'm chuckling at some of the comments here. Yeah.
Ryan says, oh yeah, Don says, math kills me, but I totally make sure I research and get it right. Like honestly, I set up formulas in Excel and let the computer do the math. Like after I set the formulas, it's just entering numbers in cells, and getting results. Like it's but for some people that's super hard, and they're like, I have to use a program to do math, and I'm like, easier.
You don't need to.
You can have everything set up on paper and pen, and you can do it that way, I guess. But like most of the people I've interviewed, like, oh, now I have an Excel sheet of like stuff. And things I just plug in and chat,
and it grows every day.
Yeah, it grows. Like I think I'm up to like 20 tabs on my Excel sheet just from like, because multiple books, multiple chapters, things changing, keeping track of like character sheets every chapter, or like anytime anything changes, different monsters you have with like damage rolls and armor and like characteristics and item lists of items and whatever, and lists of characters. I'm like, have you ever, this is kind of a side question, like when you're writing, because at this point you have audiobooks come out, does that fact influence your writing? Because I know you said that you don't like putting in tables specifically in your book. Is that because of the audiobook thing, or just because you don't like seeing them?
Well, I just I think that if you do it, like, I'm kind of a minimalist with the tables, just because otherwise it's like, hey, I have 100,000 words in here, and then it's like, oh, like tables. So I try to, I'm trying to write a story of at least a certain length, so that you get a really good comprehensive story, and then blown away by the tables if you let it. So that's my real concern. But yes, there is, for the audiobook, I know that a lot of people prefer the audiobook to actual reading, which is totally fine. I think it gives you a different outlook on how the book is, because when Vikas was reading Dungeonborn, I was listening to it and I was like, who wrote this? Like, this is totally different from how I heard it in my head, but it is a little worrisome to be like, all right, HP 50, mana 50. Like, I'm worried a little bit that going through it'll be like, okay, here we go again. All right, I'll speak it again. But yeah, so I'm concerned for the fact that it doesn't, like, tables don't translate well to audiobook. But since I am writing it, intending it to be a book, it's hard for me to be like, hard for me to care, I guess. For like, I want the audiobook to be amazing, I really do, but it makes it hard, like, because I'm like, I'm writing this for me, I'm writing this for my this is the intended media, this is how it is supposed to be absorbed, is book form. So if I'm just worried that people will be like, oh man, all those tables all the time, it's so hard to read, or it's so hard to listen to. So it does influence me a little in that I want to keep them less, but I do keep them very accurate.
That's cool. So in the chat room it says, Dave says Ramon equals scribe and math whiz. Thanks, man. Don suggested we actually let them see some of these tables and Excel sheets. That's totally doable. We can do that. She also says in audiobooks, tables and that listing of info is just awful. She points out the game, which is GAM3, was terrible with that, but there's been some other interesting ways authors deal with it. And I agree. Like, I'll talk about it in a second. See what else. Dave Wilmar says, Dakota, have you ever inserted a friend or colleague into a book character and killed them off in a horrible and embarrassing ways?
Charles D. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. I actually have had a few people that are like winning competitions or something, and like for instance, I every once in a while I run a competition on my Facebook or my Patreon, and I'm like, hey, who wants to create a character? And sometimes people are like, oh, I want to create a character, but I want them to die. And I'm like, well, that makes it easier on me because I only had to remember them for a short while. And it was really funny because if you remember in Dungeonborn, there was an elf, Leopard Leo something. So really long elf name. She ran in. She's like, hey, you know, I will teach you our peaceful ways of bunny loving by force, right? And then she goes in and she dies horribly right away. Well, so that was a fan created character. They wanted an elf that would go in and die. I said, okay. Well, another person won a character later, and they said, I really liked that character. Bring her back. So I'm like, well, she's dead, so I can't really do that. But I found a really good way in book 3. It'll be a little bit, she'll be more important in book 4, but she is actually the final boss right now in the dungeon. So that will be very interesting to see someone try to fight her.
Well, good. Excellent. So good answers. I've done that too as well. Like for, like we both have Patreons, right? And so like one of my rewards is like, oh, if you support a certain level, you get to have a character in the novel. It could be like usually super minor. But in one instance in Adventure Book 3, which I was writing, one patron subscriber gave me such an amazing character. Like I'm making it a much bigger character than I originally thought of. Like this is a character that's like a it's a kobold artificer who is also in tuned with earth magic, and so he like dives in and out of the earth, and he's like super small. He's like super small looking for a kobold. But he also like creates a bunch of cool stuff, and he's like a pocket dimension that he can pull things in and out of, and it's a really fun character. I'm like, oh, this is too awesome not to use as like a semi like main character. I'm like, oh, this is nice. So I'm like, oh, thanks, Patreon subscriber, you made my story more interesting. But going also back to the audio stuff, I'm like, I found like in Project Alpha, I've actually was writing it with the audiobook in mind in some places. Like I eliminated a lot of all the damage notifications. Like even introduced the characters, like, oh, you get in the fight to make the characters hit each other, and I was like, oh, Armand deals damage to whoever for whatever, or Armand gets damaged for whatever, and that can get kind of tedious. And I eliminated all that because I'm like, someone's gonna have to listen to this at some point,
right?
Because I knew I was gonna make it not like, so I changed it around and just like, oh, instead it as a description in the paragraphs, it's like, oh, the main character's like, I see a red 5 leave. Float away from the monster, and that's kind of the way I ended up like dealing with that particular issue. But also, like I eliminated a lot more of the like character sheet stuff, like just gobs and gobs of numbers. And I even do this for my regular audiobooks. Like I'll have a slightly different edition for the audiobook version, where it's like I eliminate a lot of like the super long number things. Just so it sounds better. Because I noticed like when I was like listening as an editor, like just approving what my narrator was saying, it kind of got annoying if it was like more than 3 lines of like game notification. You know what I mean? Because I don't know how you handle this, but like my narrator does a different voice for the game notifications. She does like a computery kind of Siri voice.
Sure.
And so it's definitely like a whole different character setup for those audiobook narrations, for the game notifications, I should say. And so listening to more than like 3, because in some books it's like the combat log is like 2 pages long. Right. And so like just listening to all those things can get kind of annoying in audiobook because you can't skip it as easy as you can when you're reading it. You can just like skim by. So like interesting stuff there. And let me see. I'm just going to pull up real quick for Don the spreadsheet for that she was looking for.
Oh, sure.
Let's see if I can grab that.
While you're doing that, kind of how I deal with that is, hello. I can see in the back end of your stuff.
Like actual spreadsheet. Patreon subscribers already have access to this, so it's secret information. But yeah, this is for Adventures on Terra. I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
is there a way for me to share my screen for that, or?
Yeah, there's a little button on the left-hand corner. It says right below the chat thing. It says
screen share, yeah. Cool.
So you can just pull it up, and so this is all our information for spells, items, names of stuff. I have a lot of character names and like descriptions, mostly for my audiobook narrator, so she has like a grasp of like, who these people are. But it's getting kind of long. See, this is that one there, Saint Token.
Sure.
Was any character for that story? Like, it's a really cool character, to be honest. Quest logs, monsters. We're getting to like some descriptive stuff for like damage, average health. I actually have a whole thing for let's see, formulas. Yeah, equations that I use. If it decides to populate.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. I can show you mine. I blacked out a few of the hidden things real quick. But yeah, I can show one of mine if you want to see it.
Sure. I'll drop mine
out. Sure. So for this upcoming one, this is I'm not really sure. Okay, cool. So now you oh geez. Quick. So this is kind of how mine look in this. I like have actual like straight character sheets. I blacked out character class and some of the other stuff. But yeah, like I have ability modifiers like extra strength, like all sorts of goodies in there. And then I have, I'm not sure down here, but you can see like
are you
tabs and tabs.
Because I can't see it. Huh? Did you already screen share it?
I did. Yeah. Is it not screen share?
No, I can't see it. I think it's all or something like when you pop it up.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Is that it? Okay, that working? All right, cool.
That's you. So yeah, there's the whole thing. Yeah, there it is.
All right, cool. So if we go back up here, then like I have like full character sheets, where it's all color coded. I blacked out some of the stuff so you can't see exactly what's going on.
Man. I'm like, I'm looking at this. I'm like, you guys are color coded. I'm like, man, you're talking black and white and stuff. I'm like, you're totally a coder mentality. Yep. Like everything has to be organized and color coded, so it makes sense to me.
Very much so. And then like all sorts of stuff. So I have characters, reputation, basic info, quests. I'm not going to show you the quests. Sorry, you're going to have to read those. Gear, skills. I can't show you the skills either because that's a dead giveaway for a lot of the stuff. But yeah, man. But I try to. How do I stop screen sharing now? Just hit that again. Cool. Yes. So like I keep very meticulous notes, and sometimes I get worried because I'm like, crap, did I add that experience on? Because it's like
writing the comments, like, and then later on, like, oh, did I forget to add experience points on the character sheet for that? Did I forget to add it in? That happens to me on a fairly regular basis. Like, oh, did I mess up? Because then you have to go back and like retroactively figure out how much experience points to add in, and it's like, oh man, I just wish I would have done it at the time. Yeah. A couple of comments in the chat room. Let's see. Dawn says that's cool. Thank you very much for sharing. She loves the fact that you added colors, apparently.
Oh yeah.
She's like, I like it too. I'm just like, I never thought about that. I'm like, it's like the colors thing is not a big deal to me because like, I'm like, okay, let's see. Dawn says it's willing to see it again. Great. And Dave Willamar says Flatfoot.
Yeah. So Flatfoot is it's a modifier that not only does it affect speed, it affects like how easy you are to knock off your feet.
You're caught flat-footed, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're stable, like if you're standing stable on the ground, you're braced, and you get hit, you don't go flying. But if you are, like kind of caught off guard and like say you have 1 foot raised and you're kicking out and you get tackled, you're going to go down a lot easier.
Right. It's a balance check almost, like a DC modifier.
Right. Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Is there a point where it gets out of control, Matt? Yes and no. So it does kind of get extreme if you're trying to change a lot of stuff very fast. But that's kind of why it's color coded as well. You can't really see, but like I have a lot of formulas in there. So a few of the rows will actually gray out if they're not pertinent. or they'll like you fully just can't see them. Like in part of that there was like the modifier at level 10, modifier at level 50, right? The level 50 is obviously not pertinent. So it like it's there, but I can't actually change it or touch it or use it for anything. Like even if I try to like copy it, it'll just say this cell is locked. So yeah, so couldn't see what was under the black part. I thought you named someone Flatfoot. No, I did not name anyone Flatfoot. That was just.
Although that may be something that comes up in the future, since he's still writing that particular novel. Someone might be named Flatfoot. I'm thinking them as a monk class.
Yeah, there you go.
Unarmed specialization, maybe in Taekwondo. I don't know. Sounds fun though. But yeah, as far as like getting out of control, it honestly, when I have that information, I'm less out of control of the story, because you have. Right. I think one of the things with like LitRPG in particular is that when you set up your game world in advance, like the rules, it makes that part of the storytelling a little bit easier, because you're less likely to go magic wand. This is what sticks. you have a set of guidelines that your world operates under, and it's very math based for most of, well, like for me and for Dakota, just because we use numbers, and so characters can do things and they can't do things. Like you can do a little bit of wiggle room with like storytelling, like, but as far as like the world rules go, like they're fairly set, and and that to me that's good, because that means your world is fleshed out. Just like in real life, you can't do some things, unless you're magic wand waving in your story plotline. So I can get out of control as far as like becoming a thing of like. It's a lot of work to do on the front end, but once you set it up, like James Hunter was saying that, he's like, once he set up his world rules, once he set up like the game stuff, like he's like, it was way easier to write LitRPG, because then it's just referencing something as you're writing.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you're saying, yeah, it's very important to not like say you're level 3, right? If you go out there and in like the Ultra World series, like one of the things was the Necromancer class was very useless, but then a guy came along that was dragging, I think it was a red bear, and very Russian, and like the guy that was dragging the red bear, kiting it, he died, but the bear was at like no health, so this level 2 dude killed the level 30, which in most game stuff just won't work. Like you need, not only do you need like a critical hit to do any damage, but that damage will be so minor that it just won't matter. Like a level 30 is in D&D would be a level 10 prestige class, and you don't as a level 2 basic class, like you don't do damage to a level 10.
Well, he's also using like a virtual reality game model, not necessarily D&D. So in the VR game system, like there's a little more wiggle room.
Sure.
Because all that math is hidden on the server stuff. So, and in an MMO, in some games, as a level 1 character, you can potentially kill level 10 or 30 characters depending on the game mechanic rules. Like I was playing a game called, let's see, what is it called? Destiny Original Sin, and they totally allow you to absolutely kill enemies that are 10 levels above you, as long as you're doing smart and you're playing it right, and you basically kind of understand the rules enough that you can work within those rules to bend them out and do some really cool stuff. It just kind of depends on the world.
Right. Oh, let's see. Dave says, couldn't see what. Okay, no, we were talking about Dakota. As you're about to spawn a level 1 human, have you been tempted to write a pregnant NPC and grow a corresponding critter? So I did a little a nod to that at the end of Dungeon Calamity. So there is I don't want to like give it away as a spoiler if other people haven't read it, but yeah, that's a thing that kind of happened. So
yeah, well, I don't know if it's a spoiler as much as you said at the beginning, like your daughter's on the way and you give a dedication to it and you name the character. I don't think it's too big of a spoiler to say like you named a character in your novel after your daughter. And
right, so, and that's a character that I will never be able to kill off because my wife would cut me.
Oh no, she's already giving you dirty look. She's like, oh no, you didn't.
Right. Well, yeah. Let's see. Anyone have questions about the books, upcoming books, or anything like that? Like anything you want to hear? This is an AMA, remember, so feel free to ask personal questions or things. But remember, Ramon and I do not need to answer them. We will.
Oh, darn it. Well,
you can ask anything. Doesn't mean you'll get your answer.
here I was going to ask like personal questions about, size and girth. I'm like, okay, never mind.
Awkward. Oh, and I'm not wearing, by the way, I'm not wearing like a sports shirt. This is a D20 shirt. So this is a Dungeons and Dragons shirt. It's not an NFL shirt. Yeah, so for all those people out there that were concerned that I'm suddenly a giant sports ball fan, unfortunately, no.
Sports ball. I think me and your wife had the same thought in our head. Sports ball. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Dave asked, are there dragons and or bacon?
Are there dragons or bacon? There's always bacon. Come on now. Dragons, if there are dragons, it will be kind of an end game sort of thing. I'm certainly not going to give my character a dragon.
Yet.
Because, yeah, I very much so enjoy stories. Like, my favorite kind of stories are, like, you are a human, right? You're a human. And stuff is difficult. Like, you're fighting an orc, man. Like, they're basically like gorillas. You know, they have some serious muscle. And if you're fighting them in hand-to-hand combat, if you get hit, you're going to break like, a porcelain unicorn falling on bricks. Like it's not so much a question of can I fight them one-on-one? It's more a question of, can my group as a shield wall all collectively take one of their hits? While we wait for our mage to burn them to cinders. So it's more like everything is baseline human, and as you progress, how I'm doing that. If you look back at that character sheet, I'm not going to pull it up again, but I'll describe it for you. So an ability score of 10, a raw score of 10 would be a baseline human, right? So a baseline adult human, I should say. So someone who, probably works an office job. So, they're kind of, it doesn't mean anything special. It just means that they are an adult. They don't have to work out constantly. They don't have to do all this other stuff constantly. And if you do, that's where those modifiers come in. So say baseline 10 is just kind of basic human. You do your job, you go home, you watch TV. You enjoy life, but you kind of just human. Above that, so say you get to 20, right? So I'm saying that if you're at a 20, you are 20% higher than 20% more powerful in that than a baseline human. So if your strength is or if your strength is 20, that means that you have that baseline 10, and then with a divide by 100 basically. So it's 20% higher than a baseline human. So that means that if I can lift 130 pounds, that means someone else can lift 160, 180, and then just keeps going up. And then what I'm doing is until you get to 50, when you get your raw score to a 50, then you get a modifier of 1 plus that modifier. So say you get to 50 in charisma, right? That means that you have you are doubly as effective as a normal human in charisma. So you are twice as swap, twice as and then it goes up every 50. You get a one plus that percentage.
Okay, and I'm curious about how you're increasing attributes in your story. Then is it because by the D&D model, that's a very different system, I think, than
yes.
Possible to get a 50 in charisma at all.
It is. So by performing special actions, you get raw score. So okay. you don't get modifier, but you get raw score. And so that means if I talk to a crowd and I convince them 100% that this is what they need to do, you get a +1 to charisma, maybe, right?
Now, is that permanent or temporary?
That would be a permanent.
Okay.
And there are temporary modifiers. I think the one that I did recently was stinky. So like they were, he had not changed clothes in like 4 days because he's playing a game. You know, he hasn't bathed in the game. He hasn't like cleaned himself at all. And so he looks at his character sheet and he's like, man, why is no one talking to me? Stinky. You know, it's a -2 raw score on your charisma. So he's like he's like subhuman. So he's just smelly.
Yeah, I was thinking that when you said that, I'm like thinking like, oh, like the trog ability of like smelly. His modifier for that smell ability for that particular race. A couple of notes from the chat room. Let's see. Daniel Shinhofen says he wanted to say he really enjoyed your novels. Thanks, Dakota. Keep up the good work. Dave Wilmarth is saying sports ball pretty much clinched it for him. I think he's planning to buy your books now.
Oh, hey, all right.
He also says that he tries to make his characters think and strategize through the fights rather than charging and swinging Ramon's sword of unbeatableness. I don't recall making a sword of unbeatableness. I do have a horny spear in book 1, and that's just because it's made out of a stick and horn. But like the main character in that was like horny spear. I'm like, yeah. So.
Oh my. That's a different kind of spear, I think, than we want to have in our possession.
No, it was a totally good. It was his first item that he crafted in Adventure Storybook 1. He knew the world. He killed a horned rabbit, and he's trying to craft a better weapon than just his hands and rocks. And he's like, gotcha. "Oh, I'll tear up my shirt and tie the horn to a stick, and I have my horny spear." And yeah,
that's great, man.
But yeah, like your system seems always. All your systems, I should say, seem very detailed, and you can always tell just from your spreadsheets. Like you think about these things and you have your formulas, and I think that's a lot of the back end stuff of LitRPG stuff is like making your system make sense and balancing acts. Like going from like super detailed to like making things interesting without being unbalanced is a challenge. Right. But if like I don't know about you, but like I've been making game systems since I was like 12. When I first read my first D&D manual, I was like, oh, this is a game system. Let's work with numbers. Math is fun.
Math is fun. Yeah. I think one of my most fun characteristics is perception, because in the game world, you're feeling real pain, right? And kind of what I'm doing is perception will help you see fine details. It'll help you see like spot ambushes. So it's kind of a needed class or as a needed attribute for a lot of different people, like archers.
Is it a skill or an attribute? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's attribute. It's a needed attribute for a lot of people. The downside is that the higher it gets, say if you get that to 50, and you're twice as perceptive as a normal human, that means that you're feeling twice the amount of pain as a normal human. So like all of your senses are better. Your sense of touch, all your nerves are feeling much more highly attuned. So you walk into a smelly area, you're like, whoa. So against a person with very high perception, you would have like a much greater negative to your charisma if you stink, right? And they'll see a lot of flaws, but there's the trade-off is that they're able to fire at targets much farther, or they're able to do detailed work much easier because they can see it, or they can smell it, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Like if you're a cook and you're using perception, you're using taste and smell more.
Like someone with a high perception skill would eventually be like an isolationist because of just all that stimuli, and it's like that wizard in the tower basically because they see too much. They see the flaws of humanity way too much. They're too sensitive to. Yeah. They're too perceptive to like the negative things around them. It seems like a very interesting story to tell.
Yes,
like and super high perception skill.
Right, and that can be balanced out though with a higher constitution. So like if you're like, oh man, I can't deal with this. Well, if you have a higher constitution, you're like, all right, this smells, but I can deal with it. Like I'm not going to get sick because I'm overpowered by her perfume. So, which is a thing in real life too. But like intelligence and wisdom, if you don't have those fairly balanced, those are gonna have some interesting effects. Or strength and dexterity. You can be as flexible as a brick, lifting things, but like you're like, oh, I'm 100% muscle, but I can't scratch my back.
Well, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, and then so essentially, like it will, all these attributes will actually alter your body as you are increasing them. So it's really fun, man. It's just really fun to write this. That's my plan for today. I'm going to write as much as I can in this book. And same for tomorrow. And up until we have a baby, I'm trying to write as much as possible.
There's also the baby part. I think that's part of the general plan for the weekend, hopefully.
Well, that's actually, I'm planning that out for next week. Danielle is planning that since Wednesday. She's like, all right, today's the day. Thursday comes around. All right, today's the day. Friday comes around. Today's the day.
I don't know. Have you looked up the very interesting ways to help induce labor? So there's some very fun, interesting ways to do so.
Yeah. We tried spicy food, and yeah, I think that's the only one.
Yeah, I can hear you laughing in the background.
I see your eyebrow wiggling.
Hey, look, if you're gonna do it, like, have a good time with it at least.
Jeez.
I'm just saying, there are lots of ways. I'm just go on a nice walk around the the block or something. But Daniel Schnuff in the chat room says Thack 0.
I'm not really sure.
I think that might be like a D&D reference from like D&D 1.0 maybe. I got it at 3.5. Oh, sorry. Dave also says, congratulations on your upcoming noob. Recommending you invest in sleep potions, aka Captain Morgan, and nose plugs of
nose plugs of toxic deterrents.
Yeah. Those first few diaples will make you wonder if you spawned an orc. Nice. I don't know. I've only been with infants like when they come from the hospital, and that poop smells surprisingly not nice. Like it smells like I don't know, baby. But I'm like newborn baby poop is not like super horrible. Like once you start eating solids and stuff, like then it gets really bad. But like I'm just saying.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, that's one aspect I'm certainly not looking forward to. So.
Oh yeah, little poop. Okay.
Taj says, "Oh man, I just woke up and saw this." Well, welcome, Taj. How's it going, man? All right, cool.
There it is. Yeah. Oh, I think you got that chat notice before I did because I didn't see it. Daniel says you played old school D&D 2-hit armor class 0. See, I knew that's what it was. Because I've read those manuals in retrospect. Like after 2.5, I went back and saw the original ones, and I'm like, oh, THAC-CO. I'm like, oh, yeah, 2 armor, a 2-hit armor class. There you go. Hey Taj, how you doing, man? Okay, so lots of game mechanic stuff. This turns out to be the game mechanic conversation.
It's fun. Like I like talking mechanics like this,
No, I do. I certainly love it as well. Like, let's see. I think one of my favorite mechanics from Project Alpha is probably Inspect. It seems like really simple. Like, you see someone's level. But the way I kind of implemented it is that there are 2 different classes of people in the world. One are the people who have access to the dungeons and see them, and they're part of that particular system. The system. I'm not original. That's what I actually call it. And then there's everybody else who's kind of treated like an NPC in the world. In the relationship to like the game stuff. And the main character can actually use Inspect to look at them, and he gets like depending on how high his skill level is, to see their backstory. And like each person apparently has a backstory in the system, like a summary of it. So like I think we kind of mentioned a little before, like using that in dating. Like you can see a person and you can see if they're the crazy chick or not right up front in advance, or like
see if they have any status ailments.
Yeah, pretty much. And in one particular instance, the main character uses it on a coworker, and that coworker then becomes less of a pain in the butt because he understands, she has issues. Like she has, I won't spoil her, but it's like he sees her background and it's like, so that's why she is the way she is. That's why she's coming in late to work all the time. It's not because she's a flake, it's because she has this situation. Sure. And I like that aspect because it makes an interesting point of character. Like if we just had more information about each other, we could understand each other better. Sure. As humans and as people, as coworkers, people will become less of an NPC and more of like, you're a real person once you get to know them, once you get like that little kernel of information that you can then empathize with. You know what I mean?
Sure. Your wife does psychology, right?
Nope.
No, I was making a joke because like
okay. That's sorry. I was like, did she? Did I hear?
Like, I was making a joke because like you were getting really into like the interpersonal communication thing, and I was like, oh man, that's really good stuff. But I was wondering if you were having a cheat sheet off to your side there.
No, that's the thing. Let's see. Tajel says, you rock, Dakota. Congrats on the baby. Dave Wilmar says, inspect waitress. She's angry with her cheating boyfriend and looking to get even. Yeah, that's kind of what happens in the stories on a couple of occasions. Like you get extra information as a system user using inspect or some other skill, and it's like it's a definite benefit for real life because you have game power. So I'm like, oh, like so those are some cool storytelling opportunities, at least to me. In that, what would you do with real game life hours? And part of this is influenced by like stories like The Gamer and other things. But I'm like, oh, cool things can happen or bad things depending on like your situation and who you are, whether you're a jerk or not. Let's see. Any other questions from the chat room?
Nothing doesn't look like it. No, people are pretty vanilla today. They just want to chat, which is great. I love talking. So I'm always waiting for those invasive questions, but I never seem to get them. I'm okay with that.
You said I couldn't ask them. Well, you said I could ask them, but you wouldn't answer them, and you were like,
"No. I said I don't have to answer them."
Yeah. Also, do you want to talk about like width and girth? Because I mean, your arms look pretty big. I mean, it looks like you've been working out, man.
Well, a little bit. I have a standing desk, so between desks, I just do squats.
You do squats. That's what I was saying. Like, you do squats on that desk, don't you? Like your calf muffing massive.
Jeez. Yes, for multiple reasons. Part of that is cake.
Yeah, personally, I've been gaining more weight as a writer, like as a stay-at-home writer, because I'm just sitting all the time. I'm like, yep, the pounds are just kind of slipping on.
Well, you know what they say, man. Exercise will promote, brain activity. So, see, I haven't been working out, or it's just actually early morning hours. So I'm like, yeah, it's things happening. It's words.
Exercise, promote activity, brain somewhere deal.
Yeah. Yes. Brain power +1 with exercise.
Dave Wallenmarth in the chat room is asking you, Dakota, is the wife sitting off to the side, pointing a weapon at you to ensure proper behavior? I see you looking over there, man.
She's not. Huh? Nothing? I said nothing? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, she's not pointing a weapon, but she's definitely off to the side. And she's just so gorgeous that I had to look over every once in a while. But beyond that,
I feel like she should be in the chat room. Like she should be on her computer, like joining us for chat. Like,
I think she's watching. I am. Yeah, she's watching on her phone. So.
No, she can be on the video chat. Like if you shared that link I gave you before on Facebook, she could actually join us in the actual conversation. We could see her.
Well, she could be like, see, with the chat, like. It says you have to create a channel to join the chat. Oh, see, there she is. She's there. I don't know why I can't get in. Like,
she can join chat. Like, I remember I sent you that link to join the conversation, like the video chat, and she could totally.
For some reason, it's not letting me actually like write in there. It's like it says say.
Oh gosh, here I'll send you another one. Like it's like you copy and paste it basically.
Maybe.
That same.
I did. She just appeared. Yep, everyone's very excited that Danielle's in the chat room with them.
There you go. See that? Well, this is the one like she could actually join the video conversation if she wanted to. Otherwise, it's just the chat room which she's already hanging out in. So.
Oops.
Yeah. So there's.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that one. Like, if you wanted to join the video conversation.
Oh no, cool. She doesn't.
Otherwise, okay.
Yeah.
Waves. There she is. She appeared. Yeah. Okay. So just a thought. I was like adding new people. I figured like, oh, if Dakota just disappeared suddenly, what would I do? And I was like, oh, I can just invite other people from the chat room.
There you go.
You can get this giant conversation of like people who've never seen each other.
Yeah, that might be fun. Yeah. I mean, throw that out there. Just be like, hey guys, anyone want to join in the chat? I mean, it's 6 a.m. and everyone's fresh out of bed, well, except for you. Apparently, you must have got up early and been like, gel up the hair. And
well, no, if I'm gonna be on camera, I gotta put on my hair and my makeup and my gear. Otherwise, it's like, Ramondo play like that. But it's like 7:30 now. Like we've been talking for like a good hour and a half at this point.
It's true.
So like people were more likely to be up,
which is good. But kind of I'm feeling breakfast is calling, so
yeah, I'm okay with like if you feel like this is a good amount of time, like you're all chatting it out.
I think so. We talked good mechanics. I just wanted to have a nice chat with you, so it's always fun to have other people join in.
Yeah, apparently everybody, Dakota just wanted a video chat. Like he didn't mean for this to happen. He made the mistake of saying, oh, can we do the podcast thing? And I'm like, oh, he must mean like he wants us to have a conversation and record it and do an AMA or like a special author interview or something. And like later on this morning he was just like, no man, I just wanted a video chat. I'm like, but it's cool. Like, it's cool if we do this. I was like,
yeah. I mean, multiple reasons. I mean, it helps your podcast, which is great. And you know, I do love talking to people. So, a little too much. You know, I'm a very chatty person.
No, it's definitely fun. I'm like, okay, this is still a very fun conversation, even like a Reddit sport about like taking questions and revealing your secret formulas and like literally your secret formulas from your Excel sheet. And I know, and I know some people. I've never actually seen the behind the scenes stuff for LitRPG authors, like their actual like Excel sheets. That is legitimate behind the scenes stuff. Dave Wilmer says I didn't do my warm up dance moves for this one. Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, I can do some now for you. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you
go.
But
yeah. So also, you know, I just wanted to mention that to all the fellow authors helping the chat and participating and promoting each other. I think it's really awesome that you guys are doing that. So thank you. And thank you for being, writing books, because I love to read. So, talk to me. Oh, yeah. And by the way, I love to promote other authors, especially new authors or authors that don't have a huge fan base. I won't do that with everyone. Like I definitely would want to, see some of your material before I'm like, here's a Dakota stamp of approval. Just there's some things that don't follow my personal, like, what's the word? Tastes, I guess. But like, I mean, most of the time, especially in LitRPG, I mean, I love promoting other authors and like being promoted by them and talking with them, because that opens up an avenue for like us to like talk and chat and collaborate and talk game mechanics, just a thought. So thank you to all of you out there, and thank you for joining the podcast, because that's super awesome of you.
Yeah, and just a few last minute comments from the chat room. Tajo says the dance moves are awesome. Dennis Schiedenhofen says he wants to do an AMA with Ramon now. I think it would be fun to do a drunk AMA at some point with somebody, just to see how that goes. Dave Wilmer says, Danielle, great job keeping Dakota's work in line, and as you know, hatching a human and stuff. So there you go. But like as far as the promotion goes, yeah, that's what this whole podcast is about. Like letting people know about these are the LitRPG books out. Some are great. These are some gems, but it's definitely this promotion for like people who might not ever get seen by anybody at all. It's just for a lot of like indie writers, just like the writing is oddly easier than promotional work, because none of us have any idea like, oh, how do I let people know about my little novel, my little baby my little brain baby.
Sure.
So it's cool that you are also willing to do that. So if somebody did want to have you talk about their work, would they like just send you a PM on Facebook or something, or send you an email?
Absolutely. I've actually been talking to a couple of people recently that are trying to write their own books as well. Yeah, I mean, just shoot me a PM, a private message, for those that don't know what that means. I'm sure everyone does, but yeah, I mean, I love talking, and I'm happy to give advice if you ask specific questions. But if you're just like, hey man, how do I write? I'm like, well.
Or I think this is more like when it's about like, how do I get people to read this LitRPG book I'm deciding to write, or like, what do the RPG people want to see? And I'm like, those are kind of broad questions of like.
Yeah, I mean, the more specific you are, the more I can help you. But again, a little disclaimer, like not everything that works for me will work for you. So, this is not legal advice. This is not whatever. It's just me chatting with you and being like, hey man, here's some things that work for me, and they might work for you as well. Sort of, like I definitely am not going to say I'm the authority on this, because I'm definitely not. I just enjoy writing. So, if you want to talk about writing, that's kind of my jam. If you want to talk about like promotion and networking and stuff like that, that's a little harder. Beyond that, it's more just start talking to other authors, start talking to fans, like see what fans want to, like talk to people, be like, hey man, what do you want to read? And a lot of people are just like, they will just jump right in and be like, hey, this is exactly what I want to see. Here we go. I have this like saved. It's on like, it's a hotkey for me now. I just press a button and it's 3 pages. Some people are very into, they know what they want to read, which is great. Promotion is a little harder. It's hard to describe. You need to really work at it. Like, you need to engage with your audience and talk to people and try not to mess up too badly. So
I just have a question, I guess. Daniel just said in chat, she just downloaded Rapture 2. Speaking of Daniel Scheenhofen, whose book Rapture just came out. It's, like I said, we were talking about it earlier, Daniel Scheenhofen, in the beginning of the podcast, so you kind of missed it. But like, really entertaining novel. And I didn't realize, does Danielle actually read other lit RPG stories besides like yours?
Typically, no. Oh, she's so Danielle is a scientist. So she does she's a research molecular biologist. So typically her reading material is a little more dry than ours. So it's not that she doesn't want to read your books. It's that we're both usually working until 10 p.m., 9 p.m.
Yeah, I was just curious because she's like, I just downloaded Daniel Scheenhofen's latest novel, Rapture, the author's cut, which is like, so we talked about that earlier. I'm like, ooh, that's the sexy version.
The sexy version.
It is. Totally, it's the sexy version. Like, so I'm like, ooh, I'm curious to see what she thinks about it later.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I'll let you know. You
don't have to.
So you got the sexy version on. Yeah, maybe she'll read that, while we're in the hospital, and she'll be like, "Oh."
Yeah, man. Like, I'm thinking like the fact that she's pregnant kind of tells us, how she reacts to that kind of stuff. So I'm like, oh, nice. Good for you, man.
Terrible.
Did you see the question? Where
there you go. But yeah, so I guess this is it.
Hang on a second. We got another question.
Yeah, we got cuts.
Which one, hon? Alex Amante. I must have missed it. Oh, there it is. Where do you guys get feedback on your writing before publishing your first book?
Okay.
See, now we're actually getting to the AMA. Maybe we should have started later in the morning. So before publishing my first book, the only person that read it was my lovely wife for me. So I put out Dungeonborn after I rewrote it 3 times because I knew that if I didn't put it out at that point, I probably wouldn't get around to it. And like I've told many people, I expected 2 people to read it, my wife and my mom. Been quite a few more than that, which is nice. So yeah, my first book, what I should have done is I should have talked to other authors. Like I read Aaron Weingrad's book when it first came out, or before it came out, I should say, and I loved it. And as soon as it came out, I put up posts on my Facebook and groups about it, trying to direct people his way because it was a really good book. I mean, he did a good job, and like I'd love to do that for other people. For me, I'm not a huge fan of like the sexy time writing. Like I said in the past, it's, to me, it interferes with the story. Kind of like, I don't know. It's just not my kind of reading. Like if I want to read a romance novel, I'll look in the romance section. But I mean, to each their own. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that really enjoy that. Just not a huge thing for me. So if you're trying to send me the new 50 Shades of Grey, I probably will be like, hey, that's great. Maybe you go talk to Ramon and maybe he'll promote it for you.
The LitRPG, 50 Shades of Grey, if it's entertaining, then like, yeah, sure. But like, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, the sex stuff it's cool. Like, it's fine if you're into that. But like, I usually skip over it when I'm reading these novels. Like, very rarely do I invest time because it's not my thing either. But you're right. Like, it is good for other people, and like you have to at least respect that is an audience that kind of mixes in with LitRPG readers. So
sure. But and I'm not trying to put down anyone's book. I know, but what's her name? Reed.
Eden Reed.
Eden Reed. Yeah, Eden Reed. I think that's kind of like what she does, and I mean, people like that a lot, and I know that if I want to read like a sexy time book, I'm going to go probably look up Eden Reed's, but until that point, I'm probably going to be like, hey, go you, congrats on writing. That's awesome. I'm so glad you're putting books out. But not really my scene.
So that's cool. Like, some authors will actually write their sexy time books, even if it's LitRPG, under a different pen name. Like Eden Reed writes a LitRPG with erotic in it under that name, and then she writes. She tried to write a different LitRPG series under a different author name, just so that they're separate. Sure. And that one didn't have any text in it at all. So I'm like, that's also an option for you. But as far as like getting feedback, like, yeah, I'm in the same boat as you for that first book, because we didn't know what we were doing. We were just like, oh, I'm going to write a story, and my wife will edit it because she loves me and she's super supportive. And I give her foot massages in my case.
Exactly.
And at that point, like, okay, she finished it, so put it out and we'll see what happens. But as like you get more progressively like better with your writing, you want better feedback. So you get beta readers. There's like a couple lists on the Facebook groups for LitRPG and like some other writer groups for LitRPG where there's like, 30, 40 people listed who are like, oh, I would love to read beta read. And for people who don't know that, people who read early versions of your story and give you feedback on whether it's going to be story structure or just like pointing out grammar and spelling errors, or just like concept or like notes on like, oh, this didn't work for me. What's up with this question? Or like this is an error in your continuity because earlier on, like on page 567 or like page 3, you said this thing and that doesn't match anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah. And so there's plenty of ways to get feedback. Another way is just to put it out online for free, like with the Royal Road.
I would mention though that if you're trying to put it up on Amazon, like if you're trying to sell your books, like if you're trying to make money on it, if you're going to use beta readers, I would definitely suggest being careful. Either use people that you know very well, or have them sign a non-disclosure agreement. Something it's doing that is not saying that you don't trust them. It's saying that you want to protect yourself. Especially if you have multiple beta readers. Like what I did with my beta readers is I sent them all a copy that had slightly different endings, like very slightly. But like if I went out on the internet and I saw a free version, and I could be like, oh, so it's this ending, which means it's okay, thanks, and then I can be like, hey, this is the copy that you got. You got copy C, and that's the one that's out on the internet for free in Russia. So, dude, WTF?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I kind of. Sort of sad that we have to do that.
I mean, it's.
I think part of it came from that issue of like plagiarizing, where like some random person just decided to like rip off someone else's.
Yeah, like with
book.
James Hunter.
Yeah, and they published it under their name, and they just rewrote every sentence. And I'm like, for me, the way I do that is just like I do a shared Google document, and I just check a box saying, oh, they can't download this, and they can't. Screenshot it, and they can't, so it makes it at least more challenging for people. Like they can still comment on like the Google Docs, just that they can't, if they want to copy it manually by hand, like, oh, I can't stop them.
I mean, there are ways around that though. So I mean,
I know.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, yeah,
but
it's
yeah. Yeah, I know. That's something you have to trust, and something where you don't. But like you're right, you should use people you trust or at least are familiar with as not stealers of material. Another way is that you can just, send yourself a version of your document in the mail, so you have, written proof that you wrote it at this particular time.
Right.
And so if it becomes an issue later on, like with Amazon or whatever, you have actual proof saying you're the original creator of this particular content. And it's just, it makes me so sad to think about that, because that means our community is getting larger. And that's great for everybody as far as like making sales and everybody enjoying content. But it's all the same. At the same time, it's like you see more people who are just shady coming into the community, like wanting to either just like money grab or like in like the case of plagiarizer, literally rip someone off and make money off someone else's creative juices. And I'm like, that's so sad to me.
Yep. Oh, and Taj says yes to NDAs. They are creative condoms. So that's.
And Dave knows where all his beta readers live.
And Dave says he knows where all his beta readers live. So, all right. Literally, that's I'm reading the moohoo ha 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 there. So.
Okay. Dave also says Nova Sky equals no sexy time. Is Nova Sky a novel? Like.
I'm not sure, I guess.
I'm pretty sure that's not the name of one of his novels. Like he writes different stuff. Okay, there you go. Okay, so any other questions from the audience? Like it's coming on like an hour 45 for us.
Yep.
And then Dakota, I can hear Dakota's stomach growling through the microphone.
That might just be my wife. No, it's my stomach. Definitely my stomach.
Okay, so she's not growling at you saying, "I'm hungry and I'm pregnant." That's not a good combination.
No, she had breakfast already while I was sitting here being hungry. So.
Oh. Well, yeah,
it's for the best.
Probably. Yeah, my wife came out earlier. She was like, I think she gave me the hungry look, like, oh, she's hungry for breakfast too.
Ha.
So I get it, man.
Oh, I'll be right back. By the way, hang on a second. Yeah.
Sure. And Chapman says, David Wilmer says, Eden reads LitRPG is Nova Sky. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's the one that I didn't want to say that.
So I just wanted to mention
she writes it under again a different pen name. So that was like, okay, that was her non-sexy time LitRPG that we were mentioning before. And that's the physical for Dungeon Calamity.
Yep. Just got the actual book in, so I'm very excited. I'm actually what I'm doing today beyond writing is I am sending these out to a few people. So yeah, so I think you're getting a copy, but it depends because I have a lot of obligations to send these, especially with my patrons. They are.
Oh, do you know them to your Patreon subscribers like at a certain level?
Yes, I do.
See me, I was like. For book 2, I made the stupid mistake of like not going through CreateSpace, but going through the Amazon version of the print one, which means I couldn't get like the reduced at cost version.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Which totally made doing that super expensive. It was like $30 to like order the book and then like resend it to somebody else. I was like, oh man, that sucks. Because I couldn't do that anymore for book 2 of Adventures in Terror.
Oh, sorry, my wife was mentioning. Dave I think he does say that Eden Red's LitRPG is Nova Sky. Okay,
I told you she should just like be in the video chat. If she's gonna be telling us the stuff anyways, she'd just be like, popping real quick like, Dakota.
Hi. Alrighty, man. Well, I think that we're getting into nonsense now, so maybe we should call this good for today.
We used to buy like 15-20 minutes ago, and then we got not new chat things. So, but yeah, this is it, folks. Thanks very much for listening, for watching, for hanging out with us. We're both hungry, and so we're gonna go eat breakfast. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you again for hanging out with us while we chat about this thing we love, LitRPG, that become such a great and intimate part of our lives with the community and with our writing. So thanks a lot, everybody in chat who's nice enough to ask questions, and of course, thank you, Dakota Crowd, for joining the conversation and taking some time to chat with me and the audience.
Ramon, I gotta say, it's always a pleasure. There's nothing I would rather do over coffee than chat with you. So we'll do this again sometime. Maybe though we'll push it out a little bit later in the day so more people are able to show up.
Well, no, I was trying to be nice and be like, oh no, Dakota's planning to have a pregnancy today, so like I want to give as much time as possible to. That, so like, I don't mind getting up, but like the audience does.
Great. All right. Well, hey, thank you everyone for participating. Thank you so much for being here, and have a amazing weekend and just great day.
There we go. Okay, thanks everybody. See you later, guys. Bye.